Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Western Canon Challenge, where we are reading the entirety of the Western literary canon out loud. Today we are continuing in The Well at the World's End, a tale by William Morris. We are on chapter 33, entitled Ralph is Brought on the Road Towards Utterbol. But now when it was morning, they struck the tents and laded them on wains, and went their ways the selfsame road that Ralph had been minded for yesterday, to wit, the road to Utterness. But now must he ride it unarmed and guarded. Other shame had he none. Indeed, David, who stuck close to his side all day, was so sugary sweet with him, and praised and encouraged him so diligently, that Ralph began to have misgivings that all this kindness was but as the flower garlands wherewith the heathen times men were wont to deck the slaughtered beasts for the blood offering. Yea, and into his mind came certain tales of how there were heathen men yet in the world, who beguiled men and women and offered them up to their devils, whom they called gods. But all this ran off him soon, when he bethought him how little wisdom there was in running to meet the evil which might be on the way, and that way a rough and perilous one. So he plucked up heart, and spake freely and gaily with David, and one of the two others who rode anigh. They were amidst of the company. The Lord went first after his forerunners, and a litter done about with precious cloths. And 20 horsemen came next, fully armed after their manner. Then rode Ralph with David and a half-dozen of the magnates. Then came a sort of cooks and other serving men, but none without a weapon, and last another score of men-at-arms. He saw that fleeing was not to be thought of, though he was not bound, and save for lack of weapons, rode like a free man. The day was clear as yesterday had been, wherefore again Ralph saw the distant mountain-top like a cloud. And he gazed at it long till David said, I see that thou art gazing hard at the mountains, and perchance art longing to be beyond them, were it but to see what like the land is on the further side. If all tales be true, thou art best this side thereof, whatever thy lot may be. Lieth death on the other side, then? Quoth Ralph. Yea, said David, but that is not all, since he is not asleep elsewhere in the world. But men say that over there are things to be seen which might slay a strong man for pure fear, without stroke of sword or dint of axe. Yea, said Ralph, but how was it then with him that builded Goldburg? Oh, said David, hast thou heard that tale? Well, they say of him who certes went over those mountains and drank of the well at the world's end, that he was one of the lucky. Yet for all his luck, never had he drunk the draught had he not been helped by one who had learned many things, a woman to wit. For he was one of them, with all the women who are in love, and thence indeed was his luck. Moreover, when all is said, 'tis but a tale. Yea, quoth Ralph, laughing, even as the tales of the ghosts and bugs that abide the wayfarer on the other side of yonder white moveless cloud. David laughed in his turn, and said, Thou hast me there. And whether or no these tales are nothing to us, who shall never leave Utterbol again while we live, save in such a company as this. Then he held his peace, but presently spake again. Hast thou heard anything, then, of those tales of the well at the world's end? I mean others beside that concerning the Lord of Goldburg? Yea, surely I have, said Ralph, nowise changing countenance. Said David, Deemest thou aught of them? Deemest thou that it may be true that a man may drink of the well, and recover his youth thereby? Ralph laughed, and said, Master, it is rather for me to ask thee thereof, than thou me, since thou dwellest so much nigher thereto than I have done heretofore. David drew up close to him, and said softly, Nigher? Yea, but belike not so much nigher. How meanest thou? Said Ralph. Said David, Is it nigh that a man may leave home and come thereto in his lifetime? Yea, said Ralph, in my tales it is. Said the old man still softlier, Had I deemed that true, I had tried the adventure, whatever might lie beyond the mountains. But, and he sighed withal, I deemed it untrue. Therewith dropped the talk of that matter. And in sooth Ralph was loath to make many words thereof, lest his eagerness shine through, and all the story of him be known. Anon it was noon, and the Lord bade all men stay for meat. So his serving men busied themselves about his dinner, and David went with them. Then the men-at-arms bade Ralph sit among them, and share their meat. So they sat down all by the wayside, and they spake kindly and friendly to Ralph, and especially their captain, a man somewhat low of stature, but long-armed like the Lord, a man of middle age, beardless and spare of body, but wiry and tough-looking, with hair of the hue of the dust of the sandstone quarry. This man fell a-talking with Ralph, and asked him of the manner of tilting and courteous jousting between knights and the countries of knighthood, till that talk dropped between them. Then Ralph looked round upon the land, which had now worsened again, and was little better than rough moorland, little fed, and not at all tilled. And he said, This is but a sorry land for earth's increase. Well, said the captain, I wot not. It beareth plover and wimbrel, and conies and hares, yea, and men withal, some few. And whereas it beareth not else, that cometh of my lord's will, for deemest thou that he should suffer a rich land betwixt him and Goldburg, that it might sustain a host big enough to deal with him? But is this not his land? Said Ralph. Said the captain, Nay, and also yea. None shall dwell in it save as he willeth, and they shall pay him tribute, be it never so little. Yet some there are of them, who are to him as the hounds be to the hunter, and these same he even wageth, so that if aught rare and goodly cometh their way, they shall bring it to his hands, as thou thyself knowest, to thy cost. Yea, said Ralph smiling, and is Morfinn the Unmanned one of these curs? Yea, said the captain with a grin, and one of the richest of them, and despite of his fiddle and minstrel's gear, and his lack of manhood, for he is one of the most cunningest of men, but my lord unmanned him for some good reason. Ralph kept his silence a while, and then said, Why doth the Goldburg folk suffer all this felony, robbery, and confusion so near their borders, and the land debatable? Said the captain, and again he grinned, Passing for thy hard words, Sir Knight, why dost thou suffer me to lead thee along whither thou wouldest not? Because I cannot help myself, said Ralph. Said the captain, Even so it is with the Goldburg folk. If they raise hand against some one of these strong thieves or man-stealers, he has but to send the war arrow round about these deserts, as ye deem them, and he will presently have as rough a company of carles for his fellows as needs be, say 100 of them. And the Goldburg folk are not very handy at a fray without their walls. Forsooth, within them it is another matter, and beside not even our Lord of Utterbol would see Goldburg broken down. No, not for all that he might win there. Is it deemed a holy place in the land, then? Said Ralph. I wot not the meaning of holy, said the other, but all we deem that when Goldburg shall fall, the world shall change, so that living therein shall be hard to them that have not drunk of the water of the well at the world's end. Ralph was silent a while and eyed the captain curiously. Then he said, Have the Goldburgers so drunk? Said the captain, Nay, nay. But the word goes that under each tower of Goldburg lieth a youth and a maiden that have drunk of the water, and might not die save by point and edge. Then was Ralph silent again, for once more he fell pondering the matter, if he had been led away to be offered as a blood offering to some of evil gods of the land. But as he pondered, a flourish of trumpets was blown, and all men sprang up. And the captain said to Ralph, Now hath our lord done his dinner, and we must to horse. Anon they were on the way again, and they rode long, and saw little change in the aspect of the land. Neither did that cloud-like token of the distant mountains grow any greater or clearer to Ralph's deeming. Chapter 34. The Lord of Utterbol will wot of Ralph's might and minstrelsy. A little before sunset they made halt for the night, and Ralph was shown to a tent as erst, and had meat and drink good enough brought to him. But somewhat after he had done eating comes David to him and says, Up, young man, and come to my lord, he asketh for thee. What will he want with me? Said Ralph. Yea, that is a proper question to ask, quoth David, as though the knife should ask the cutler, What wilt thou cut with me? Dost thou deem that I durst ask him of his will with thee? I am ready to go with thee, said Ralph. So they went forth, but Ralph's heart fell, and he sickened at the thought of seeing that man again. Nevertheless, he set his face as brass, and thrust back his fear and his hatred for a fitter occasion. Soon they came into the pavilion of the Lord, who was sitting there as yester eve, save that his gown was red, and done about with gold and turquoise and emerald. David brought Ralph nigh to his seat, but spake not. The mighty lord was sitting with his head drooping, and his arm hanging over his knee, with a heavy countenance, as though he were brooding matters which pleased him not. But in a while he sat up with a start, and turned about and saw David standing there with Ralph, and spake at once like a man waking up. He that sold thee to me said that thou wert of avail of many things. Now tell me, what canst thou do? Ralph so hated him that he was of half a mind to answer not, save by smiting him to slay him. But there was no weapon anigh, and life was sweet to him with all the tale that was lying ahead. So he answered coldly, It is sooth, lord, that I can do more than one deed. Canst thou back a horse? Said the Lord. Said Ralph, As well as many. Said the Lord, Canst thou break a wild horse, and shoe him, and physic him? Not worse than some, said Ralph. Canst thou play with sword and spear? Said the Lord. Better than some few, said Ralph. How shall I know that? Said the Lord. Said Ralph, Try me, Lord. Indeed, he hath hoped that it came to that, he might escape in the hurley. The Lord looked on him and said, Well, it may be tried, but here is a cold and proud answerer. David, I misdoubt thee whether it be worth while bringing him home. David looked timidly on Ralph and said, Thou hast paid the price for him, Lord. Yea, that is true, said the Lord. Canst thou play at chess? Yea, said Ralph. Canst thou music? Said the other. Yea, said Ralph, when I am merry, or whiles indeed when I am sad. The Lord said, Make thyself merry or sad, which thou wilt, but sing, or thou shalt be beaten. Ho, bring ye the harp. Then they brought it as he bade. But Ralph looked to right and left, and saw no deliverance, and knew this for the first hour of his thraldom. Yet, as he thought of it all, he remembered that if he would do, he must needs bear and forbear. So his face cleared, and he looked round about again, and let his eyes rest calmly on all eyes that he met, till they came on the Lord's face again. Then he let his hand fall into the strings, and they fell a-tinkling sweetly, like unto the song of the winter robin. And at last he lifted his voice and sang. Still now is the stithy this morning unclouded, naught stirs in the thorpe save the yellow-haired maid, a-peeling the withy last Candlemas shrouded, from the mere where the Morin now swims unafraid. For over the ford now the grass and the clover fly off from the tines as the wind driveth on, and soon round the sword-howe the swathe shall lie over, and tomorrow at even the mead shall be won. But the hall of the garden amidst the hot morning, it drew my feet thither. I stood at the door, and felt my heart harden gainst wisdom and warning as the sun in my footsteps came on to the floor. When the sun lay behind me, there scarce in the dimness, I say what I sought for, yet trembled to find. But it came forth to find me, until the sleek slimness of the summer-clad woman made summer or kind. There we the once sundered together were blended, we strangers unknown once, were hidden by naught. I kissed, and I wondered how doubt was all ended, how friendly her excellent fairness was wrought. Round the hall of the garden the hot sun is burning, but no master nor minstrel goes there in the shade. It hath never a warden till comes the returning, when the moon shall hang high, and all winds shall be laid. Waned the day, and I hied me afield, and thereafter I sat with the mighty when daylight was done. But with great men beside me, midst high-hearted laughter, I deemed me of all men the gainfullest one. To wisdom I hearkened, for there the wise father cast the seed of his learning abroad o'er the hall, till men's faces darkened, but mine gladdened rather with the thought of the knowledge I knew over all. Sang minstrels the story, and with the song's welling, men looked on each other, and glad were they grown. But mine was the glory of the tale and its telling, how the loved and the lover were not but mine own. When he was done, all kept silence, till they should know whether the Lord should praise the song or blame. And he said naught for a good while, but sat as if pondering. Then at last he spake, Thou art young, and would that we were young also. Thy song is sweet, and it pleaseth me, who am a man of war, and have seen enough, and to spare of rough work, and would any day rather see a fair woman than a band of spears. But it shall please my lady wife less, for love and fair woman, and their lovers she hath seen enough. But of war nothing save its shows and pomps, wherefore she desireth to hear thereof. Now sing of battle. Ralph thought a while, and began to smite the harp, while he conned over a song which he had learned one Yuletide from a chieftain who had come to Upmeads from the far-away Northland, and had abided there till spring was waning into summer. And meanwhile he taught Ralph this song and many things else, and his name was Sir Carwoodneb. This song now Ralph sang loud and sweet, though he were now a thrall in an alien land. Leave we the cup, for the moon is up, and bright is the gleam of the rippling stream that runneth his road to the old abode, where the walls are white, and the moon and the night. The house of the neighbor that drave us away, when strife ended labor amidst of the hay, and no road for our riding was left us but one, where the hill's brow is hiding that earth's ways are done, and the sound of the billows comes up at the last, like the wind in the willows ere autumn is past. But oft and again comes the ship from the main, and we came once more, and no lading we bore, but the point and the edge and the ironed ledge, and the bolt and the bow, and the bane of the foe. To the house neath a mountain we came in the morn, where welleth the fountain up over the corn, and the stream is a-running fast to the house of the neighbors uncunning who quake at the mouse, as their slumber is broken, they know not for why, since yesterin was not token on earth or in sky. Come up, then up, leave board and cup, and follow the gleam of the glittering stream that leadeth the road to the old abode, high-walled and white, and the moon and the night, where low lies the neighbor that drave us away, sleep sunk from his labor amidst of the hay. No road for our riding is left us save one, where the hill's brow is hiding the city undone, and the wind in the willows is with us at last, and the house of the billows is done and o'erpast. Haste, mount and haste, ere the short night waste, for night and day, late turned away, draw nigh again, all kissing fain. And the morn and the moon shall be married full soon. So ride we together with wealth-winning wand, the steel or the leather, the ash in the hand. Lo, white walls before us, and high are they built, but the luck that outwore us now lies on their guilt. Lo, the open gate biding the first of the sun, and to peace are we riding when slaughter is done. When Ralph had done singing, all folk fell to praising his song, whereas the Lord had praised the other one. But the Lord said, looking at Ralph askance meanwhile, Yea, if that pleaseth me not, and I take but little keep of it, it shall please my wife to her heart's root, and that is the first thing. Hast thou others good store, newcomer? Yea, Lord, said Ralph. And canst thou tell tales of yore agone, and of the fays and such like, all that she must have? Some deal I can of that lore, said Ralph. Then the Lord sat silent and seemed to be pondering. At last he said, as if to himself, Yet there is one thing. Many a blencher can sing of battle, and it hath been seen that a fair body of a man is while soft amidst the hard hand-play. Thou, Morfan's Luck, Art thou of any use in the tilt-yard?" "Wilt thou try me, Lord?" said Ralph, looking somewhat brisker. Said the Lord, "I deem that I may find a man or two for thee, though it is not much our manner here. But now go thou. David, take the lad away to his tent, and get him a flask of wine of the best to help out thy maundering with him." Therewith they left the tent, and Ralph walked by David sadly, and with hanging head at first. But in a while he called to mind that whatever betid, his life was safe as yet, that every day he was drawing nigher to the well at the world's end, and that it was most like that he shall fall in with that Dorothea of his dream somewhere on the way thereto. So he lifted up his head again, and was singing to himself as he stooped down to enter into his tent. Next day naught happened to tell of save that they journeyed on. The day was cloudy, so that Ralph saw no sign of the distant mountains. Ever the land was the same, but belike somewhat more beset with pine woods, and they saw no folk at all on the road. So at even Ralph slept in his tent, and none meddled with him, save that David came to talk with him where he slept, and was merry and blithe with him. And he brought with him Otter, the captain of the guard, who was a good company. Thus wore 3 days that were hazy and cloudy, and the Lord sent no more for Ralph, who on the road spake for the most part with Otter, and liked him not ill. Howbeit it seemed of him that he would make no more of the man's life than of a rabbit's, according as his lord might bid slay or let live. The 3 hazy days passed. It fell to rain for 4 days, so that Ralph could see little of the face of the land, but he noted that they went up at whiles, and never so much as up, so that they were wending uphill on the whole. On the 9th day of his captivity the rain ceased, and it was sunny and warm, but somewhat hazy, so that naught could be seen afar, but the land near hand rose in long, low downs now, and it was quite treeless, save where was a hollow here and there, and a stream running through it, where grew a few willows, but alders more abundantly. This day he rode by Otter, who said presently, "Well, youngling of the north, tomorrow we shall see a new game, thou and I, if the weather be fair." "Yea," said Ralph, "and what like shall it be?" Said Otter, "At mid-morn we shall come into a fair dale amidst the downs, where be some houses and a tower of the Lord's, so that that place is called the Dale of the Tower. There shall we abide a while to gather victual, a day or 2, or 3 maybe. My lord will hold a tourney there, that is to say that I myself and some others shall try thy manhood somewhat." "What?" said Ralph. "Are the new colt's paces to be proven? And how if he fail?" Quoth Otter, laughing, "Fail not, I ready thee, or my lord's love for thee shall be something less than nothing." "And then will he slay me?" said Ralph. Said Otter, "Nay, I deem not, at least not at first. He will have thee home to Utterbol, to make the most of his bad bargain, and there shalt thou be a mere serving thrall, either in the house or the field. Thou shalt be well fed, save in times of scarcity, and belike well beaten withal." Said Ralph, somewhat downcast, "Yea, I am a thrall who was once a knight, but how if thou fail before me?" Otter laughed again. "That is another matter. Whatever I do, my lord will not lose me if he can help it. But as for the others who shall stand before thy valiancy, there will be some who will curse the day whereon my lord bought thee, if thou turnest out a good spear, as ye call it in your lands. Howsoever, that is not thy business, and I bid thee fear not, for thou seemest to be a mettle lad." So they talked, and that day wore like the others, but the haze did not clear off, and the sun went down red. In the evening David talked with Ralph in his tent, and said, "If tomorrow be clear, knight, thou shalt see a new sight when thou comest out from the canvas." Said Ralph, "I suppose thy meaning is that we shall see the mountains from hence?" "Yea," said David, "so hold up thine heart when that first sight cometh before thine eyes. As for us, we are used to the sight, and that from a place much nigher to the mountains. Yet they who are soft-hearted amongst us are overcome at whiles, when there is storm and tempest, and evil tides at hand." Said Ralph, "And how far then are we from Utterbol?" Said David, After we have left Bullmead in the dale of the Tower, where tomorrow thou art to run with a spear, it is 4 days' ride to Utterness. And from Utterness ye may come, if my lord will, unto Utterbol in 12 hours. But tell me, knight, how deemest thou thy tilting tomorrow? Said Ralph, Little should I think of it, if little lay upon it. Yea, said Ralph, but art thou a good tilter? Ralph laughed. Quoth he, That hangs on the goodness of him that tilteth against me. I have both overthrown and have been overthrown oft enough. Yet again, who shall judge me? For I must tell thee that were I fairly judged, I should be deemed no ill spear, when I came not uppermost, for in all these games are haps which no man may foresee. Well then, said David, all will go well with thee for this time, for my lord will judge thee. And if it be seen that thou hast spoken truly, and art more than a little deft at the play, he will be like to make the best of thee, since thou art already paid for. Ralph laughed, yet as though the jest pleased him but little, and they fell to talk of other matters. And so David departed, and Ralph slept. Chapter 35. Ralph cometh to the Vale of the Tower. When it was morning, Ralph awoke and saw that the sun was shining brightly. So he cast his shirt on him, and went out at once, and turned his face eastward, and scarce awake said to himself that the clouds lay heavy in the eastward heavens after last night's haze. But presently his eyes cleared, and he saw that what he had taken for clouds was a huge wall of mountains, black and terrible, that rose up sharp and clear into the morning air, for there was neither cloud nor mist in all heavens. Now Ralph, though he were but little used to the sight of great mountains, yet felt his heart rather rise than fall at the sight of them. For he said, Surely beyond them lieth some new thing for me, life or death, fair fame or the forgetting of all men, and it was long that he could not take his eyes off them. As he looked, came up the Captain Otter, and said, Well, knight, thou hast seen them this morn, even if ye die ere nightfall. Said Ralph, What deemest thou to lie beyond them? Of us none knoweth surely, said Otter, whiles I deem that if one were to get to the other side, there would be a great plain like to this, whiles that here is naught save mountains beyond, and yet again mountains, like the waves of a huge stone sea. Or whiles I think that one would come to an end of the world, to a place where is naught but a ledge, and then below it a gulf filled with nothing but the howling of winds and the depths of darkness. Moreover, this is my thought, that all we of these parts should be milder men and of better conditions, if yonder terrible wall were away. It is as if we were thralls of the great mountains. Said Ralph, Is this then the wall of the world? It may well be so, said Otter, but this word is at whiles said of something else, which no man alive amongst us has yet seen. It is a part of the tale of the seekers for the well at the world's end, whereof we said a word that other day. And the dry tree, said Ralph, knowest thou thereof? Such a tree, much be-worshipped, said Otter, we have not very far from Utterbol, on the hither side of the mountains. Yet I have heard old men say that it is but a toy, and an image of that which is very anigh the well at the world's end. But now haste thee to do on thy raiment, for we must needs get to horse in a little while. Yet one more word, said Ralph. Thou sayest that none alive amongst you has seen the wall of the world. None alive, quoth Otter. Forsooth, what the dead may see, that is another question. Said Ralph, But have ye not known of any who have sought the well from this land, which is so nigh thereunto? Such there have been, said Otter, but if they found it, they found something beyond it, or came west again by some way else than by Utterbol, for they never came back again to us. Therewith he turned on his heel and went his ways. And up came David, and one with him bringing victual. And David said, Now, thou lucky one, here is come thy breakfast, for we shall presently be on our way. Cast on thy raiment, and eat and strengthen thyself for the day's work. Hast thou looked well on the mountains? Yea, said Ralph, and the sight of them has made me as little downhearted as thou art, for thou art joyous of mood this morning. David nodded and smiled and looked so merry that Ralph wondered what was toward. Then he went into his tent and clad himself and ate his breakfast. And then gat he to horse, and rode betwixt two of the men-at-arms, he and Otter. For David was ridden forward to speak with the Lord. Otter talked ever gaily enough, but Ralph heeded him little a while. He had his eyes ever on the mountains, and could see that for all they were so dark, and filled up so much of the eastward heaven, they were so far away that he could see but little of them, save that they were dark blue and huge, and one rising up behind the other. Thus they rode the down country, till at last 2 hours before noon, coming over the brow of a long down, they had before them a shallow dale, pleasanter than aught they had yet seen. It was well grassed, and a little river ran through it, from which went narrow leats, held up by hatches, so that the more part of the valley bottom was a water meadow, wherein as now were grazing many kine and sheep. There were willows about the banks of the river, and in an ingle of it stood a grange or homestead, with many roofs half hidden by clumps of tall old elm trees. Other houses there were in the vale, 2 or 3 cots, to wit, on the slope of the hither down, and some half-dozen about the homestead. And above and beyond all these, on a mound somewhat away from the river and the grange, a great square tower with barriers and bailey all dighty ready for war, and with the banner of the lords hanging out. But between the tower and the river stood as now a great pavilion of snow-white cloth, stripped with gold and purple, and round about it were other tents, as though a little army were come into the vale. So when they looked up into the fair place, Otter the captain rose in the stirrups, and cast up his hand for joy, and cried out aloud, "Now, young knight, now we are come. How likest thou my lord's land?" "It is a fair land," said Ralph, "but is there not come some one to bid thy lord battle for it? Or what means the tents down yonder?" Said Otter, laughing, "Nay, nay, it hath not come to that yet. Yonder is my lord's lady-wife, who hath come to meet him, but in love, so to say, not in battle, not yet, though I say that the cup of love betwixt them be brim-full. But this it behoveth me not to speak of, though thou art to be my brother in arms, since we are to tilt together presently. For lo, yonder the tilt-yard, my lad." Therewith he pointed to the broad green meadow. But Ralph said, "How canst thou a free man be brother in arms to a thrall?" "Nay, lad," quoth Otter, "let not that wasp sting thee, for even such was I, time was. Nay, such am I now, but that a certain habit of keeping my wits in a fray maketh me of avail to my lord, so that I am well looked to. Forsooth, in my lord's land the free men are of little account, since they must oftenest do as my lord and my lord's thralls bid them. Truly, brother, it is we who have the wits and the luck to rise above the whipping post and the shackles that are the great men hereabouts. I say we, for I deem that thou wilt do no less, whereas thou hast the lucky look in thine eyes. So let today try it." As he spake, came many glittering figures out from those tents, and therewithal arose the sound of horns and clashing of cymbals, and their own horns gave back the sound of welcome. Then Ralph saw a man in golden armor of strange outlandish fashion, sitting on a great black horse beside the lord's litter. And Otter said, "Lo, my lord, armed and a horseback to meet my lady. She looketh kinder on him thus, though in thine ear be it said, he is no great man of war, nor need he be, since he hath us for his shield and his hauberk." Herewith were they come unto the causeway above the green meadows, and presently they drew rein before the pavilion, and stood about in a half-ring, facing a 20 of gaily clad men-at-arms, who had come with the lady and a rout of folk of the household. Then the lord gat off his horse, and stood in his golden armor, and all the horns and other music struck up. And forth from the pavilion came the lady with a 50 of her women, clad gaily in silken gowns of green and blue and yellow, broidered all about with gold and silver, but with naked feet, and having iron rings on their arms, so that Ralph saw that they were thralls. Something told him that his damsel should be amongst these, so he gazed hard on them, but though they were goodly enough, there was none of them like to her. As to the queen, she was clad all fine in linen and gold, with gold shoes on her feet. Her arms came bare from out of the linen, great they were, and the hands not small. But the arms were round and fair, and the hands shapely, and all very white and rosy. Her hair was as yellow as any that can be seen, and it was plenteous, and shed all down about her. Her eyes were blue and set wide apart, her nose a little snubbed, her mouth wide, full-lipped and smiling. She was very tall, a full half-head taller than any of her women, yea, as tall as a man who was above the middle height of men. Now she came forward hastily with long strides, and knelt down before the Lord, but even as she kneeled, looked round with a laughing face. The Lord stooped down to her and took her by both hands. He raised her up and kissed her on the cheek, and he looked but little and of no presence beside her. And he said, Hail to thee, my lady! Thou art come far from thine home to meet me, and I thank thee therefore. Is it well with our house? She spake seemingly carelessly and loud, but her voice was somewhat husky. Yea, my lord, all is well. Few have done amiss, and the harvest is plenteous. As she spake, the Lord looked with knit brows at the damsels behind her, as if he were seeking something, and the lady followed his eyes, smiling, a little flushing, as if with merriment. But the Lord was silent a while, and then let his brow clear, and said, Yea, lady, thou art thanked for coming to meet us, and timely is thy coming, since there is game and glee for thee at hand. I have cheapened a likely thrall of Morfinn, the unmanned, as he is a gift to thee. He hath given out what he is no ill player, with a spear after the fashion of them of the West, and we are going to prove his word here in this meadow presently. The lady's face grew glad, and she said, looking toward the ring of newcomers, Yea, Lord, and which of these is he, if he be here? The Lord turned a little to point out Ralph, but even therewith the lady's eyes met Ralph's, who reddened for shame of being so shown to a great lady. But as for her, she flushed bright red all over her face, and even to her bosom, and trouble came into her eyes, and she looked adown. But the Lord said, Yonder is the youngling, the swordless one in the green coat, a likely lad, if he hath not lied about his prowess, and he can sing thee a song withal, and tell a piteous tale of old, and do all that those who reared in the lineages of the Westlands deem meet and do for men of knightly blood. Dost thou like the looks of him, lady? Wilt thou have him? The lady still held her head down, and tormented the grass with her foot, and murmured somewhat, for she could not come to herself again as yet. So the Lord looked sharply on her and said, Well, when this tilting is over, thou shalt tell me thy mind of him, for if he turn out a dastard, I would not ask thee to take him. Now the lady lifted up her face, and she was grown somewhat pale, but she forced her speech to come, and said, It is well, Lord, but now come thou into my pavilion, for thy meat is ready, and it lacketh but a minute or so of noon. So he took her hand and led her into the pavilion, and all men got off their horses, and fell to pitching the tents and getting their meat ready. But Otter drew Ralph apart into a nook of the homestead, and there they ate their meat together. This is the end of chapters 31 through 35 of The Well at the World's End, a tale by William Morris. In the next video, we will proceed to chapter 36, entitled The Talk of Two Women Concerning Ralph. Thank you for listening.